Well, good evening. My name is Rick Niebuhr. I'm the Vice Chair of the Appropriations Committee, and I now call the Thursday, June 8th meeting of the Appropriations Committee to order. Prior to beginning our meeting, we will have a few obligatory words from our Town Administrator, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So John Coder, Town Administrator. So this is the meeting of the Appropriations Committee. You've had several Zoom meetings, but they have all been primarily joint meetings with Board of Selectmen and other boards and committees at this point. So just through the chair, just to set the table for a couple of housekeeping matters that need to be covered at the start of the remote meeting. This is an open meeting of the Appropriations Committee. It's being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth, the outbreak of COVID-19. In order to mitigate the transmission of COVID-19 virus, Town of Northborough has been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings. And as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. All members of the Appropriations Committees are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely in this meeting. The order allows the Appropriations Committee to meet entirely remotely, so as long as reasonable public access is afforded so that public can follow along with the deliberations of this meeting. Public's encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. Members of the public who wish to view the live stream of the meeting may do so by going to Northborough Remote Meetings on YouTube via the link listed on the agenda. This meeting ensures public access, but it does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law or posted on the agenda. This meeting does not feature public comment or participation. As a reminder, the Board of Selectmen and the Appropriations Committee held a joint public hearing regarding the budget on Monday, June 8th. The Appropriations Committee also participated in a joint meeting presentation regarding the FY 2021 budget on June 4th with the Board of Selectmen, Financial Planning Committee, the Appropriations Committee, and the Northborough K-8 School Committee. We encourage all interested residents to view that presentation, which is available for streaming on the Northborough Local Access website. For purpose of tonight's meeting, the purpose of tonight's meeting is for the Appropriations Committee to receive any outstanding information relative to financial articles that are included on the town meeting warrant, to ask any final questions, and ultimately this evening to take a vote regarding its recommendations for the various warrant articles. So having said that, I will turn the intro back over to the chair to go through the confirming of the members' remote access, please.
All right, we will take a roll call of all those members and participants in this meeting. When you hear your name, please respond in the affirmative. First is George Benko.
I'm here.
And Janice Height.
Here.
Anthony Petit.
Here.
Bob D'Amico. I understand Bob will join us later. And myself, Richard Niebuhr. Now for the staff, when I call on you, please respond in the affirmative. John Coder, our Town Administrator.
Present.
Jason Little, our Finance Director.
Present.
Greg Martineau from the School Superintendent.
Present.
Rebecca Pellegrino, Director of Finance and Operations.
Present.
And Kathy Joubert, our Town Planner.
Present.
Okay, as any speakers come up, they will please go through the chair. And when you are recognized, then you can speak when I give you the floor. Anyone who wishes to speak or ask a question, please raise their hand when the speaker is finished, and you will be recognized. When you are not speaking, please mute your microphone so we don't have any type of feedback. So right now we will get into the meeting. Our first agenda is the approval of the minutes from March 7th, 2020. So I have a motion to approve the minutes. I see Janice and approve them. Do I have a second?
Second.
Tony has seconded them. Now roll call.
Wait, may I correct the minutes, though?
Yes,
Um, I was absent at the March 7th meeting.
all right, we will make that correction. Do we have any other corrections or comments on the minutes? All right, we have a motion and a second on the floor to accept the minutes. All in favor, George,
Aye.
Janice,
Aye.
Tony,
Aye.
and myself, aye. The minutes for our March 7th meeting have been approved. We will move on to the March 12th meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the March 12th meeting?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Janice made the motion, Tony made a second. All in favor? George,
Aye.
Aye.
Janice,
Aye.
Tony,
Aye.
and myself, aye. Motion has been made, seconded, and unanimously approved the minutes of the March 12th meeting.
Mr. Chairman, if I
Yes.
may just draw your attention, I believe Mr. D'Amico is now in the meeting. If you just want to confirm that he can hear us. He has no video, but
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Bob.
Okay,
just,
yeah. So I vote yes too.
All right, great. That makes it unanimous. Our next item on the agenda is from our town planner, Kathy Jubert, will tell us about the community preservation article. So Kathy, I'll give you the floor.
Okay. I think you all have a copy of my memo, which is a summary of each one of the articles and the funding allocation. So I'll just use that, Mr. Chairman, as the guide for tonight. So the first category that the CPC is recommending as far as in the historic preservation category is, of course, the White Cliffs debt service. And actually on the first page of my memo, I have it as 214,000 and change. And it's actually, there's an additional little over 11,000. So the article is going to read that it's $225,300. So again, that's our, that we're obligated for the White Cliffs debt service. The next application that was submitted for under the historic preservation category is for continued repairs over at the library. This is on the old portion or the original portion of the library, and it has to do with roofing repairs. And then because of the roof that needs to be repaired, there was internal damage also to some paint and the moldings. So that's going to all be repaired as one project. Excuse me, and that is for a total of $109,194. And you may remember that last year there was a portion of this that was discussed by the library, and then when they went out to bid, they realized that there wasn't enough money. So so we're reallocating, and the new total is the $109,194. And oh, I thought someone had a question, sorry. And then the last category, or the last application for the historic preservation category, is for the Historic District Commission. And they are looking to work with a consultant to prepare a federal nomination for the Howard Street Burial Ground and Cemetery for it to be listed in the National Register of Historic Places. And it's quite a document, not only lengthwise, but as far as the actual material that has to be in it. So they requested $8,000, and the CPC, the Community Preservation Committee, agreed that was a worthwhile project. And then as far as the open space and recreation category, we have 3 applications this year also in that category. The largest one being, as far as the amount of funding, The project is for the Assabet Park renovation. And I believe that John has spoken to you about that project before. So in total, that project that will be coming out of CPC funds is $452,225. And that obviously is anticipated, to begin as soon as town meeting takes place. Another project in that category is a project that we have funded before. The Conservation Commission has requested, I believe it's been twice in the past, money for pond restoration. And specifically in the past, it was for Bartlett Pond. And we anticipate that the brunt of this funding will be used for Bartlett Pond also, $135,000. And what that's going to do, it's a little bit more than they have requested in previous years. And what we're going to be able to do is spread this out over a couple of years to keep maintaining the pond. And this all has to do with weed invasion or invasive species. And then the final project under the open space category is a project that was brought in by a private group, and they're working with the recreation department. And this is for an 18-hole disc golf course that is being located. Some of you may have seen some of the work that's already been done out at in the back of the senior center. We refer to that as the Edmund Hill Woods. And the project right now is on hold. The group was a little bit aggressive when we gave them the go-ahead to do some very, very minor vegetation removal. And it's a group of volunteers, and so that's always a little exciting but challenging to work with when it's people that haven't been through the process before. So ultimately, what has happened, and I have a very long history. If anyone has any specific questions, I won't go into the history right now, but certainly if you do have questions about that. But basically right now, the Conservation Commission has issued an enforcement order, which is the best way that we could get everybody's attention. So there's a cease and desist on the project. So there isn't any work happening. We originally allowed them to do some advanced work, in advance of town meeting funding. So that project is on hold right now, and they are going before the Conservation Commission, or they've been called into the Conservation Commission, and the commission is meeting for the first time remotely on June 29th. We anticipate that that the commission will get to this group that evening, but it's their first remote meeting and they've got quite a lengthy agenda. But for now, again, that project is on hold. In the housing category, as we have in the past, working very cooperatively and collaboratively with the Northborough Housing, the Northborough Affordable Housing Corporation. They requested funding this year, and again, it'll go into the Housing Reserve Fund and not directly to the corporation. And then, we will eventually have a funding agreement as we have in the past, or as the town has in the past. And then the final is again the standard operating costs for the administration of the CPC, working with town council, sometimes having to do surveys or plot plans. And that is a standard article every year. And this particular year, where the CPC has allocated $31,000 for the administration of the act. So those are the articles this year. I have the article numbers if that's of any assistance to anybody. I don't think the warrant's been published yet, but if anyone certainly has any specific questions about any one of them, I'm more than happy to ask. And if it gets a little too detailed, Jason is right there.
Yes, Tony.
Just a question about the library repairs.
Mhm.
In the in the memo that, from today, CPA articles, the amount is listed as $71,000, but you mentioned a different amount, which included some additional repairs, and that was that 109,000?
Yes, the additional, well, actually, the total project is in the warrant as 109,194
For Article 34?
for Article 34, yes. So again, originally it was the $71,002, Tony. But then when they realized they had to, that wasn't enough.
Right, I just wanted to
Okay.
see where it was on here, that's all.
Okay, okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Do I have any other questions or comments? Yes, George. Janice.
Is the leak in the library roof as you face it on the right-hand side in the corner?
I believe so, yes.
That's been leaking for the last 50 years. Let me tell you that, truly. I don't know what's wrong there. We had it repaired when I was chairman. The previous one had it repaired, and it's got some structural problems. So I think it just becomes almost every 10-year expense. I have thought about whether it's the porosity of the masonry there, and that's really very unlikely. So I don't know what the cause of it is, but I know it's a regular expense.
Do we have anything else? Bob, I can't see you on here, so if you have to say anything, just cough or just butt right in. Do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
All right. Is there anything else for Kathy? All right, Kathy, I guess we're finished with you. You're dismissed.
Okay,
You can sit in as long as you'd like, though.
okay. All right, thank you very
Kathy.
much. Good to see you all again.
And that brings us up to a review and recommendations of our voting on the town meeting warrant. And for this, John has some ideas that he discussed with me on the phone, so I'd like to turn this section over to John.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this evening, I did send a memo out to you sort of framing up the articles so that you can take some consolidated votes. And as we mentioned in the opening comments, we had a joint presentation on June 4th. The superintendent has made individual presentations, obviously, to the K-8 school committee who approved the budget. The regional high school school committee, they approved the budget. I've made a presentation on the 18th regarding the general government side of the budget, the non-school departments. Then on June 4th, we had everybody get together at one time, and we were able to do a joint meeting where we brought all this information together. It was a lengthy presentation, but very thorough in terms of providing all the financial boards and committees, as well as the Board of Selectmen and the school committee with an overview. And really the point of the meeting on June 4th, as I've stated before, was to garner consensus that, you know, we're all seeing the same information. We're all agreeing by consensus with regard to our assumptions about the revenue losses that we're looking at for the upcoming fiscal year, and putting an overall financial plan together. So the collection of these articles, particularly when you look at articles 4 through 11, these are the operating budget articles. So it's a general government town budget, the enterprise funds, water, sewer, solid waste, K-8, Algonquin Regional High School, the Assabet Valley Vocational School, the reauthorization of the spending limits for the revolving funds. And then there's the Appropriations Committee Reserve Fund and the Stabilization Contribution article. So, but I do want to just back up for you this evening because there is one minor adjustment from the prior set of information that we gave you. As we were working through on the regional high school budget, the superintendent received some information regarding the regional transportation reimbursement, anticipating a lower reimbursement. as well as less in terms of state aid. So the overall budget for the regional high school hasn't really changed, but there was a ripple effect going through with regard to the assessment. And so basically our assessment we thought was going to be 2.31%. It's 2.73. So it's about a $51,000 delta. In the grand scheme of things, this is obviously within what we would anticipate. And I just want to remind everybody, particularly those who maybe at home have been involved as heavily in this process as the committee members have been. You know, back in December of 2019, when we set the table for the budget and we did our trend analysis, the single largest budgetary issue we were facing at that point in time was escalating Algonquin Regional High School assessment due to shifting enrollment, more students from Northborough going and less students from Southborough. So even though the budget was reasonable back then, and that was a level service budget back in December we were discussing, our assessment was forecast to go up to 8 or 9%. Working with the superintendent and the school committee and revising the budget back and down, we were able to get that assessment down to a little over 4%. Then everything happened with COVID-19. We had to reassess our revenue outlook again, and working with the superintendent, the director of finance for the schools, as well as the school committee, we were able to get the budget down essentially to where it is. So I just want to draw your attention to that specific delta. But at this stage again, the impact I showed you on June 4th, we talked about overall, we were looking at a general fund increase budgetarily of 0. With that change now, it is 0.07. So again, on a $70 million budget, it's negligible. But the adjustments that were made, in my opinion, were prudent and something that we certainly need to move forward with. So just to sum up, in terms of the operating budget articles 4 through 11, the town general government budget, the revised, and this is what you're voting on tonight. You're not voting the warrant as posted from March 23rd. That was our level service budget. That was our warrant that was posted prior to the adjustments and the revisions to the budgets due to COVID-19. So tonight you'd be voting on the revised, and the memo we put together shows you the original amount and the revised amount for these various articles. Under Article 4, the town general government budget revised number is $22,192,186. The water, sewer, and solid waste enterprise funds, that revised budget is $5,770,815. The Northborough K-8 public schools revised budget is $25,177,844. The Algonquin Regional High School adjusted budget that I just mentioned a moment ago, this is the operating assessment as well as the debt, is $13,219,404. Assabet Valley Regional VOC, their budget has not changed, or rather their assessment has not changed. It's $1,002,846. The revolving fund limits, these are the revolving funds primarily for EMS as well as recreation, council on aging. This is where fees are charged and used to offset the cost of providing the service. This is just a authorization. This is a housekeeping article. Authorizes those revolving funds to operate up to $910,000 across all of them. And again, that's a housekeeping matter. The last two, Article 10 and Article 11, are the Appropriations Committee Reserve Fund and the Stabilization Fund contribution. And as we discussed at great length at a joint meeting on June 4th, we are not recommending contributing anything into the stabilization fund, essentially our savings account this year. What we're recommending is that rather than put the $200,000 into stabilization, that $200,000 be added to the Appropriation Committee's reserve account. So every year, there's an article that takes 175,000 in free cash and puts it in the Appropriation Committee's reserve fund. So this is a fund that is under the control of this committee, and you use it for emergency or unexpected expenses during the course of the year. So historically, it's used to deal with storm expenses. Last year, or this year rather, I'm sorry, fiscal 19, it was used to deal with mold issues, unexpected mold issues at the K-8 schools. We've used it for unanticipated special education expenses, but more often than not, if we tap into it, it's to cover storm expenses. So again, I explained this at a lot of detail at your meeting on June 4th, but essentially you have your financial reserves, the money that you have on hand, come in two forms. It's the stabilization fund and it's the free cash. So I always say, think of it as the free cash is your checking account, stabilization fund is your savings account. So every year at town meeting, we typically transfer money from the checking account into the savings account, and we lock it up there. This year, given all the uncertainty surrounding the budget and the continuing state of emergency that we're operating in, we're recommending that we don't put the money into the savings account, we leave it there, and we designate it under the purview of this committee. And one of the things that we will use that for is if there are reductions in staff that result in unemployment expenses, those unemployment expenses would be charged to that account. Now, the beauty of this is by adding the funding into the Appropriations Committee reserve account is that it comes from free cash, so it's available funds. And if it's not used, it goes right back to free cash, so it stays there. So a perfect example is in fiscal 20, sitting here today, we haven't had to use this 175,000 reserve account. So it came from free cash at the close of the fiscal year, it goes back to free cash. And the reason why we thought this was a good approach in terms of dealing with unemployment, people in the private sector probably don't realize this, but if you work in the private sector, the employer pays an unemployment insurance, right? Based on how frequently they lay folks off, they get charged an unemployment insurance rate or premium. Municipalities don't pay on insurance premiums because historically, we very rarely, if ever, lay anybody off. And so because of that stability, it's much more cost effective for us to pay dollar for dollar. So what it means though, is that when we do have a reduction in force, it means that we pay all directly the costs of any employee that is reduced or laid off, or in our case this year, potentially furloughs if we have to get into any of those. So we're trying to avoid or minimizing layoffs and furloughs. And as the budget continues to unfold, we're trying to do everything we can to move folks around so we don't get into that situation. But if we do lay folks off or we do have furloughs, this is where we would charge it, because that would be essentially a one-time expense charged to a one-time revenue source, free cash. So those are the articles. So articles 4 through 11 are regarding all the operating budgets and the emergency reserve account. So I know you've received the superintendent's presentation. You've received the general government presentation. You've heard multiple revisions to all that. So the superintendent is here tonight. The finance director for the schools, Becky Pellegrino, is here as well. Jason Little, the town's finance director, is here, and of course I'm here as well. And so really, you've had many presentations, you've received a lot of information, but we wanted to be present tonight in case you have any questions before you hopefully take a vote to recommend those articles as revised to town meeting. Thank you.
Okay, we've just had John's summary of Articles 4 through 11 from the town warrant, and we've also heard them at a couple of the selectmen's meetings. So rather than go through each article and taking a roll call vote, we would like to combine Articles 4 through 11. And I move that the committee vote to recommend approval of the revised town meeting warrant, Articles 4 to 11, as just presented. Do I have a second? Tony?
I have a question.
Yes.
which for purposes of tonight, you would want to second the motion and then you can enter discussion.
This is
Just
Bob.
as a
I-
procedural issue.
Second.
Okay.
Who's second?
Janice.
Janice.
Oh, Janice.
Okay.
Okay, Tony, would you continue?
Oh, just on Article 5, the part of that article is raise and appropriate by taxation. How much, what is the amount of that in the revised article?
Yeah, Jason, do you have that figure? Essentially, the raise and appropriate is the general fund subsidy to the solid waste. So the solid waste enterprise fund is a combination of bag fees when people buy the bags, and then there is a subsidy from the general fund. If it was completely self-sufficient, the bag fees would be significantly higher. So it was a policy decision made probably 5 years ago by the Board of Selectmen after an 18-month study to go with this hybrid. The good news is, if you look, the enterprise fund for solid waste is down significantly. We're actually able to reduce the subsidy based on a very favorable bid for the last contract. So through the chair, Jason, you want to, do you have that subsidy number? Take yourself off mute, please.
Jason, off mute. You're on mute. We can't hear you, Jason.
Okay, you're off. You're unmuted now. Go ahead, Jason.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, the solid waste budget didn't change with the revision, so it's $337,160 is the solid waste, is the general fund subsidy for, that's the raise and appropriate part of that amount.
Thank you.
Do we have any more questions or comments on this? Tony?
One more question. Can you comment on the overall effect on taxation?
For these articles, as I said on June 4th, we can't really do that at this stage of the game. And the issue for us is, as I stated previously, we're waiting on potentially $1.3 million being released or some other form of federal assistance with regard to the COVID-19 response. And so what we anticipate will happen is sometime after town meeting, which will take place, in the next month or so, sometime after then and before the fall, we anticipate that the federal government will either release the funds that are currently sitting in an account, the COVID-19 relief funds, the $1.3 million, or they will appropriate a separate amount of funds for municipalities and states. So the issue that exists right now is with the COVID-19 relief funds that were appropriated, the 1.3 million, those funds can only be used for direct expenses associated with dealing with the emergency. And right now we have less than, I think it's $68,000 of direct expenses at this point in time. What we need desperately, we're losing $1.6 million in revenues. What we need are funds for revenue replacement. So what'll happen is sometime between now and when we set the tax rate in November, we're going to have some relief funds coming or being released from the federal government. When that happens, I would anticipate a significant portion of that will be used to reduce whatever tax impact there is. So sitting here today, it's premature. As I mentioned again at the presentation on June 4th, we are not even taxing under this budget here. We're not taxing to the full extent of a normal Prop 2.5 increase. We're $217,000 below what would be just a standard Proposition 2.5 increase. So we're below that. We're not using any of our excess levy capacity. This budget is so conservative at this stage of the game that we will actually add $217,000 to our excess levy capacity. Now, there are at least 2 neighboring communities that are probably looking at overrides right now. So not only are we don't need an override, but we're being very conservative in terms of the budgets that are brought forward. But I don't want to, at this point, there's too many moving parts and variables to get into what the tax impact would be. But I anticipate come fall, if we don't, let me just say this, if we don't have a town meeting, if this budget passes, right, we have a town meeting in the next few weeks and we pass this budget and relief funds become available through the feds or the state, if we don't have a town meeting, the only thing those funds can be used for is to reduce the tax impact. So at the end of the day, we've done on the front end everything we can to constrain the tax increase right now, but we anticipate additional revenues will be brought to bear to reduce it further. So it's too early for us to try to forecast the number when there are all these outstanding variables. But all I can say is it's the lowest it could possibly be right now. And moving forward, it will only go down.
Yes, Tony.
So you can't predict what the tax rate will be, but one thing I noticed is that compared, say with these same articles last year, we are actually seeking to raise and appropriate by taxation a smaller amount than we sought last year. Which I
Yes.
thought was,
As I stated, so typically you would take a prop, you do the 2.5 calculation, and by the way, prop 2.5 is just an arbitrary number based on the legislation, but you do the proposition 2.5 increase, and then what happens is municipalities then say, well, can we maintain services, and then you either have to cut services or you go and seek an operational override. Now, we're in the enviable position that if we need additional resources there or tax revenues, we can tap into that excess levy capacity. It would not require an override vote. Now, having said that, this money isn't just free. Anytime you access tax dollars, be it through using excess levy capacity or an override, it will raise and increase the tax impact for all the taxpayers. So the reason why we're in the position we're in is because for years we have budgeted conservatively and we didn't raise to the max of Prop 2.5. So we have that capacity there. So, but your observation is spot on. We are raising less in taxes this year than we did last year out of the gate. So again, the Board of Selectmen and this committee was very sensitive to the tax impact given the situation that the businesses are in and the residents are in. And so we're normally conservative in terms of our budgeting. This year, we were even more conservative, trying to bring forward a budget that will minimize the taxes or the tax impact. Anything below this, and the superintendent will speak to his budgets, but I can tell you anything below this here, you're laying off full-time people, full-time needed positions. And so our job in this crisis was to make all the budget maneuvers that we can and to reduce things in a way that preserves the core services and the mission that the residents are counting on. And I believe, in my opinion, this is a budget on a silver platter, frankly, and that's due to the hard work of the superintendent, his staff, all the boards and committees working together.
thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Hey, welcome Bob on here. I see his video is working. So we have a motion on the floor.
So I just do have one question.
Yes.
I have one question on when I'm looking back at the Z School debt service. Can you just comment on that a little bit? I mean, we're not proposing anything for 2020. What is Z?
We've paid it off.
Oh, okay, that's done. Okay, I just
Isn't
want
it wonderful when you've been around long enough to see a 20-year bond get paid off? I remember when we did the library project, and I'm like, oh, 20-year bond, I'll never see the end of that. It's more than half paid off. So is the senior center.
Wow, I just keep. Okay. I can't believe it's that long already. Okay, thanks.
It's nice when big chunks of debt, fall off. And that one obviously we were getting an MSBA reimbursement. That's the old model of MSBA where you finance it, and then on an annual basis, they give you their share of the debt service and you pay off the debt service. That's done completely different now, like the Lincoln Street building project that we did back in 2015, 2016. That's the new program where they give you the grant. It was just under about a $10 million grant. They give it to you all at once. And then you being the town of Northborough, we only bond the remaining portion that we're responsible for. So it's a different model. So it's been hanging on for a long time, but yeah, it's paid off, which is,
That's great.
it's always a good day. It's like paying your mortgage off.
Yeah, now I understand. Okay. Because I
All
look,
right.
I'm seeing it like, okay, we're not doing PEB. So I was thinking we were not doing the Z school, but now I understand the chart. Okay.
Yeah, you can make a lot of adjustments, but you pretty much need to pay your debts. That's not something you can defer. You can defer putting money into, unfunded liabilities and future things, but debt, yeah, that's why we have a good bond rating. You pay your bills. So just like in your own personal life, you might cut back on a number of things. You might not put money into your retirement account, but you will pay your mortgage or you'll get into trouble. So
Now, the other question I have, John, is really more about our situation with bonding. I mean, if we're not going to put the 200,000 in stabilization, like you said, does that affect anything like that, or we're okay?
no, the beauty of it is, so the reason why, just as a reminder, and really for folks at home that might be watching, the reason why every year we put $200,000 into the savings account is because we want to maintain our financial reserves as a percentage of the operating budget. So if every year your operating budget is going up 3 or 4% and your reserves aren't increasing, your reserves will slowly diminish from 9 to 8, 7, 6% of your operating budget. Our sweet spot is we want to be between 8 and 10% of our financial reserves for a community our size with our socioeconomic demographics. That's what the bond rating agencies want to see. So the beauty of it is because we've constrained our operating budgets so much in this upcoming fiscal year, and because we're not spending that money, so it has the same effect. It's like, as I said, if you leave it in your checking account and your savings account, right? The two together is what you have for liquidity. Well, for us, we're leaving it in the checking account because it's accessible for us. So if something happens, we can get at that money during the fiscal year. And we know, one thing that we know we probably will need is if we have a reduction in force, we'll have one-time costs associated with that for unemployment benefits. That's where we would charge it to. That's the plan. But the interesting thing is, under this scenario, because we have constrained the budgets and we're not spending as much free cash, our reserve ratios are actually closer to 9%. So they've actually gone up with this proposed budget.
Okay. All right. So you prepared for that. I see that. Okay.
Yes.
It's up to the Appropriations Committee to decide then at that point.
So expenditure, if this is appropriated, expenditure is within your control. And again, this is by design, because there's the alternative. The alternative would be if during the course of the year, we don't have this emergency reserve fund under your control, and we have a snowstorm, a blizzard, we have to respond to that. You'd have to call a special town meeting to appropriate $100,000 or $150,000 to deal with that expense. This way you can deal with it here. And more often than not, if it's an emergency like COVID-19 or a storm, we oftentimes can get FEMA, Federal Emergency Management, reimbursements for that. So you lay the money out of your reserve account, and then the federal government promptly pays you back in 2 to 3 years. So.
Okay, thank you, John. I understand. Great.
And look, there's a lot of moving parts to this, but this is, I love questions because I like this stuff is complicated, and it's helpful to explain it and for people to hear it more than once, particularly members of the public, to jump in. This is why you guys study this stuff for 6 to 9 months out of the year, because town meeting is not the venue to get into the weeds on this stuff. It's far too complicated with too many moving parts.
Well, I hate to dominate the questions, but I have one more question. Is that okay?
Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Chair?
It has to do with the health service. Let me try to find that again. I saw it increase there. Is there an explanation for, I probably missed the meeting on that. Is there an explanation for why the health services went up 2.5%?
Yeah, so under this budget, the superintendent and I were trying to limit our budget increases to 1%. Okay, that's kind of the limit, and that's postponing things that you really need, but you can postpone them on the short term. You cannot postpone them long term, right? So we cut back to get to that 1%. But there's a couple of centralized expenses that apply to the school department as a K-8, as well as the general government departments. So health insurance is about 70% of that is actually K-8 employees, and the Worcester Regional retirement expense, roughly about 30% of that is the non-teaching positions in the school department. So those increases we could not absorb on the general government side of the budget. So what we did is, as we discussed at our meeting on June 4th, is we postponed some capital investments that we were using our free cash for, and we're bringing $378,000 of additional one-time revenues in the operating budget to cover the increases on the health insurance and the Worcester Regional retirement. The alternative would be we'd have to portion that out. The superintendent and I would both have to then cut back below that 1%. And I think what you'll hear from, and again, I'm not going to speak for the superintendent, he's here. If we have to cut back any further, we're laying off full-time people, and that would, in my opinion, be premature given the financial plan that we put forward. So we've freed up some of that liquidity by postponing capital. We've brought it into the operating budget, and we're using it to offset the increases to those centralized budgets. And that's why those are kind of called out separately, because normally you don't see it that way, because normally it would be under the general government side of the budget. But obviously we can't fit that, because those are very significant costs. And again, they cover all departments, all departmental personnel.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That explains. Okay.
Any more questions or comments?
No, I'm all set. Thank you.
All right, we have a motion already on the floor. I will read it once more. I move the committee vote to recommend approval of the revised town meeting warrant articles 4 through 11 as presented. Now, this has already been seconded, so I will call for a roll call vote. Anthony,
Aye.
Janice,
Aye.
Bob.
Aye.
Bob Beck. Okay. George, I'm sorry.
Aye.
And myself, Rick Niebuhr, aye. So we'll move on now. We finished articles up to 11, and we'll start with Article 12. And again, I will turn this over to John Kadir to go over this section.
Thank you. So Articles 12 through 24 are what we refer to as our capital budget. So even though they're individual articles for individual projects, we present them holistically to the committee, to the Financial Planning Committee, as well as to the Appropriations Committee. Typically at town meeting, I give a overview of the capital budget. And again, just for our viewers at home, the difference between the capital improvement plan or the capital improvement program, the CIP, and the capital budget. The CIP is a 6-year plan for how we replace our equipment, fix up our buildings, and our infrastructure. So we plan those out over 6 years so that we can plan out the debt that might be associated with them and the financing in general. Every year, the projects that are on that list, they typically come in out on year 6 and they move up each year. So the year that is current, so fiscal 21, that year of the capital improvement program, the 6-year plan, is what we refer to as the capital budget. So all of these projects collectively is the capital budget. Now, we had a capital budget that the Financial Planning Committee had already reviewed and approved. This body, the Appropriations Committee, has had presentations from DPW, police, and the schools regarding all of these projects. Now, at your meeting on June 4th, I showed you the revised capital budget that was voted by the Financial Planning Committee. And so what you have before you in the handout you can see the original projects and then the revised. And so what we just talked about a moment ago with Bob D'Amico, we have scaled back some of the capital improvements that we were going to use our free cash or available funds for to create liquidity, to subsidize the operating budget, and to leave additional reserves for us as we head into some uncertain financial times. So if you look at the collection of Articles 12 through 24, you can see originally we were going to do replace 2 police cruisers for $98,000. Now we're only going to do 1 for $50,000. We were going to replace a DPW loader for $240,000. We're going to postpone that replacement in the revised capital budget. We have also postponed a culvert and drainage replacement initiative for $250,000, and we have postponed 2 trucks, one for $110,000, the other for $65,000. The last project that was revised was the Melcombe Middle School paving and accessibility upgrades. It was a $100,000 project that's been revised back to $50,000. The balance of that project, essentially the DPW director will act as the project manager, saving the overhead costs, and out of the roadway funding that we would normally do roads and parking lots throughout the town, we'll manage the recoding of that parking lot. But as far as the ADA compliance and the other work, that will take place out of this revised capital budget. So essentially, we have scaled back the number of projects that we're bringing forward to town meeting so that we can use some of that free cash to support the operating budget in fiscal 21 and to leave a larger amount basically in our reserves so that we can deal with any unforeseen circumstances. So again, this project, the original projects and the revised capital budget that's before you tonight has been reviewed and approved unanimously by the Financial Planning Committee, whose job it is to put together the capital budget. So you've had presentations on all of these. The only difference is we've scaled back the projects as presented, and we're hopeful that you support this because this is a critical component to our overall approach for dealing with the rather extraordinary financial constraints that we're facing in fiscal 21.
All right, do we have any questions or comments on the articles that were just discussed? Seeing none, I move that the committee vote to recommend approval for the revised capital budget warrant articles 12 to 24 as presented. Do I have a second?
Second,
Jen? Okay, I will take a roll call vote. Tony,
Aye.
Janice,
aye.
George,
Aye.
Bob,
Aye.
and myself, aye. The motion is passed unanimously. And again, I will turn the next section over to John Kadir to go over Articles 30 to 37.
Okay, so Articles 30 to 37 are the Community Preservation Act articles. So these are the ones that you heard the presentation from Kathy Jubert on at the beginning of your meeting. Now, keep in mind, we build, when it comes to reviewing all of the financial articles, it really builds. So it starts with the Community Preservation Committee, who holds multiple public hearings to put forward their projects. They then go through the Financial Planning Committee and through the Appropriations Committee for your recommendations. I do want to just as a reminder to folks, the community, because sometimes you look at some of these projects under the community preservation and you say, listen, if budgets are tight, why are we doing things like, the Howard Street burial historic initiative, or, why are we doing disc golf? It's important for everybody to keep in mind that under your tax bill, there is a built-in surcharge for community preservation. So these funds are collected, and this was approved, many years back at town meeting. So this funding is approved and built into your tax base. Okay, so even if you decided, or town meeting decided, we're not going to fund any of these projects, it's not going to lower your taxes, because under the law, the money is still raised. It'll just sit in an account and do nothing. So I just want to make that distinction as to why these articles, who may on the surface seem like less of a potentially of a priority over some of the other capital stuff that we're postponing. It's because this has a dedicated funding source. And if you don't approve, or the town meeting doesn't approve these projects, it's not going to reduce your taxes. The only way to reduce your taxes with regard to community preservation would be to rescind our local option for adoption of the Community Preservation Act. The beauty of the Community Preservation Act in terms of funding these types of projects is we get an annual match from the state. When we started, we got 100% match. More and more people came into the program, and that match has gone down. I think it's somewhere around 11% for the upcoming fiscal year, Kathy, if I'm not mistaken, or Jason. So
Yeah, it's in that neighborhood. The biggest draw was when Boston joined. They're the biggest fish in the pond.
Yeah. So in Boston, because it's based on a surcharge at the Registry of Deeds, and so when Boston joined, you know, the overall, it's just split over all the communities that participate. So the match has gone down over the years, but again, I would take an 11 to 20% return on my money, you know, any day of the week. So, but that's why these projects are here. So the only project that I wanted to make sure that you were aware of, and Kathy covered this in the beginning, is the disc golf folks are in a little bit of trouble in terms of how they approach the project. So they are under cease and desist from the Conservation Commission. I don't believe the Community Preservation Committee has any intention to revote or rescind that I'm aware of their authorization of the project. So it's entirely up to you whether or not you want to endorse that particular project or any of them. That's always at your discretion. I do just want to circle back and comment on Article 30, which is the Assabet Park accessibility improvements. This is a combination project. There's roughly $102,000 under the capital budget, which is under Article 17, and that's $102,775. That's the minimum improvements that we need to make at the Assabet Park. The full project, which includes the funding from the Community Preservation Committee, is to do a whole renovation of that park and make the entire thing not accessible for the residents of Northborough. And so that's why you see that funding in two places. So what I would recommend, if you're so inclined, is to lump these under one motion, and you can do that with or without the disc golf project, depending on how you feel about that particular project based on the information you received tonight.
Okay, do we have any questions or comments? Yes, Jason.
I was just going to make the comment that, pursuant to Tony's comment at the beginning, when you vote to approve these articles, you should recognize that Article 34 should be 109,194 rather than 71,002. I'll take credit for making that mistake in this memo because I missed the second number in the article, but there's two pieces of the CPA article funding this, and it totals 109,194. I don't know if that's what you were going to say, Kathy. I saw you raised your hand as well.
No, actually, I was just going to make a comment about the disc golf project. Just to reiterate what John said, the Community Preservation Committee, as far as I know, they're aware of what is happening, but there's been no discussion about holding a meeting and, rescinding their funding. Again, they realize, that sometimes working with, volunteers who aren't familiar with just how this all works and working with staff. And we certainly have their attention now. We had to go a little bit overboard in getting their attention, but we certainly have their attention. Pretty sure that they're very excited about this project, as was the Community Preservation Committee. And I think that once they talk with the Conservation Commission, they'll, again, they've come under they understand now. And also, I just wanted to add too, just so that maybe, I don't even know how you play disc golf. So, I mean, I have no skin in this game, but since we, since they were a little aggressive with their clearing, we now, as staff, go on a site visit once a week with staff. It's either the conservation agent or the recreation director. Then also a member of the Conservation Commission has been assigned to go out and check the site. And then we've also been working with the police department, who go out almost on a daily basis at this point, to make sure that, that the cease and desist is being adhered to, and it is. So I just wanted to add that about that project.
John.
So just for the record, so we're clear, given the library repair article typo. Article 30 is the Assabet Park accessibility improvements. The revised amount, actually, so the amount is $452,225. The Conservation Commission vegetation management is $135,000. The recreation disc golf course is $26,071. The White Cliffs debt service is $225,300. The library repairs full cost is $109,194. The Howard Street burial ground project is $8,000. The affordable housing reserve is $62,350, and the CPA administrative fund is $31,000. So those are the numbers that you would be voting to recommend this evening.
Any other comments or questions? Tony?
With regard to Article 32, in what you've said about what's happening with it, I didn't detect anything that actually affects whether this is a reasonable project. In other words, they took some unreasonable action in trying to set up the project, but there's nothing inherently wrong with the project, and it's currently under oversight by the town. So
Yeah, correct.
So I'm not sure that the incident then has much to do with the merits of the project.
Well, we just wanted to make you aware.
Yes, thank you.
So,
George.
Yeah, just following up on that. If we vote to approve the appropriation of the $26,000 for that project, that won't proceed until they take care of the cease and desist order and they come to terms. So in other words, by us allowing that to be appropriated, it doesn't mean it's going to be spent until they meet all the criteria they're supposed to meet, right?
yes, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, if I may comment through the chair, the point is it's important that you're not surprised if you vote to recommend a project. This is what's supposed to happen. You're supposed to have this conversation and figure out whether or not you feel comfortable recommending it. We just want to make sure you're aware of what's going on. So
Okay.
it's up to your discretion to recommend the project, the funding of the project, or not. But that's your discretion.
I'd like to ask Kathy a question. You said this right now is in the hands of the Conservation Commission. This land that they want to do the golf on, is that any sort of wetland or wildlife habitat or anything like that? Or is this just they cleared land that they shouldn't have done yet?
Well, it's actually a combination, Rick. It is conservation land that was purchased by the town and with some grant funding. So a portion of the property, this is all surrounding the senior center. So the senior center itself is on specifically town-owned property. And then the land that involves the pond and the trail system that exists that goes from, the senior center up and over Edmund Hill over to Rice Ave. That is all owned by the Conservation Commission, and with a small portion, probably about 7 acres or so, it's owned by the Recreation Department.
Right.
So it's a joint project, and there are wetlands, and that's why they received a determination of applicability from the Conservation Commission. So that's how conservation is involved.
Do I have any other more comments or questions? So I'd like to find out the pleasure of the committee first. I would like to make a motion that we approve articles from 30 to 37 in their entirety, or we can amend that to approve those articles minus Article 32. Do I have any, I think we should, I'd approve them all myself right now. Tony,
Or I would make the motion to approve all of them. I can make that motion if you'd like.
all right, do I have any other comments, pros or cons? All right, then I'll make a motion. I move that the committee vote to recommend approval of the community preservation warrant articles 30 to 37 as presented. Do I have a second?
Second,
George seconded it. We will have a roll call vote. Tony,
aye.
Janice,
Aye.
George,
Aye.
and Bob,
Aye.
and myself, Rick, aye. The motion passes unanimously. Let me see here. The only other notice I have here is a little note that says, if for any reason town meeting cannot be held on June 30th, end of the fiscal year, the town will prepare a 1/12 budget for the Board of Selectmen's consideration to be approved in accordance with the process outlined in Chapter 53 of the Acts of 2020. The only thing else now is, I've gone through the warrant articles. Would be any other business to come before the committee, and I'd like to give those that have been sitting here in silence a chance to speak. Rebecca, do you have anything you'd like to say? Rebecca? No. Gregory? Gregory might know.
So I'll just make one comment. Obviously, COVID-19 has had many impacts on our educational system. And unfortunately, one of those impacts is financial. Early on in March, when COVID-19 was playing out, there was a true partnership with Town Administrator Kader, his finance team, our finance team, and we've been working hand in hand throughout this process. So I just want to thank John and his team for the collaboration, and feel like, although it was not an easy task to bring forward a 1% budget for the school department, I think it maintains many of our programs and many of the things our community values. So I just wanted to make that general comment.
Okay, thank you. And Jason Little? Any final words?
I would echo Greg's comments about the partnership with the schools. This was a challenging budget to put together in the end, and lots of changes along the way. So again, I appreciate working with everybody, the department heads here, and John and Kathy and Greg and everybody that's present.
Kathy? Do you have any final comments? I've
No.
been back to
No,
Rebecca.
thank you.
Nothing from Rebecca? All right, John, we'll finish up with you.
Very good, thank you. And I would echo the sentiment of the superintendent as well. We're blessed in this community to have a culture of collaboration and people working together. And that's at the staff level and at the board and committee level as well. It wasn't always like that. It was a long time ago. It's been a long time since we had those stressed relationships. So it's been very good for a long time, and that is a relationship and a culture that has to constantly get fed by the people on the boards and committees and the staff as well. Just a couple of final comments I wanted to make with regard to the process. So as of tonight, you've taken your votes as you're required to do on all the financial articles. So what we would need to do, and I would recommend the committee does, is to schedule a meeting for next Thursday of the committee to review a report. So every year, the Appropriations Committee puts together a report that shows all of your votes. That report is made available to town meeting members, and the point of what you do in that report is to advise town meeting members with regard to how you think they should vote for each of these articles. And so between now and then, typically the chair would work with my office to produce that report, but I'd recommend that you have one more meeting next Thursday to review that draft report and approve it. And then that would be used moving forward to advise town meeting. Now, with regard to town meeting, the Board of Selectmen had a very a long discussion about town meeting at their June 8th Selectmen's meeting. It is on the schedule again for June 15th, and we've been asked as staff to provide some options with regard to town meeting. So we were looking at holding town meeting inside the gym in the auditorium, which seats about 3,700 people, and using 10% of that. Understandably, there are folks that are concerned about having any kind of a meeting, but particularly indoors. So you're seeing across the Commonwealth, communities having meetings inside, having them outside, having a hybrid. So we're developing, we have an inside model that's perfectly viable. We're looking at an outside model and perhaps a hybrid. So if right now town meeting is scheduled for June 22nd at the Selectmen's meeting on Monday, the 15th, the moderator will come in and we'll have a discussion with the Board of Selectmen. And so they'll decide if that date is still the target or if plans have changed. So this body, as well as the community, will have to remain flexible as we try to work through and address, the concerns that people have about trying to make this town meeting happen in the safest manner as we possibly can. Again, these are discussions that are taking place at every town across the Commonwealth, and it's just interesting to see every town approach it a little bit differently. We have a particularly difficult situation here in Northborough by virtue of our form of government. Council manager form of government, they just call a meeting of the council and they vote their budget. Representative town meeting has a smaller number of people that they know will participate in town meeting, so it's easier for them to find a location and to social distance or to have that outside because, again, they have a known number of people. In Northborough, we have an open town meeting. That means any registered voter can show up and vote. And you can get a large disparity in terms of the number of people who show up. So we have to plan for sort of a larger event, if you will. So that poses a number of unique challenges, but we're confident we're going to be able to work through that. That discussion will take place on Monday. So I'll be able to communicate to the committee after Monday if the 22nd date is still our date, or if that has had to move, or if the plans have changed. So just please remain attentive and flexible, and we will find a way to make this happen safely. So that's the last bit of information I have for you. So just again, another meeting next Thursday, same time, and we'll update you at that point with regard to town meeting. Last comment is on Monday, the selectmen will be voting their recommendations with regard to the operating budget articles as they do every year. With that vote, we will lock up our fiscal 21 budget short of town meeting action. So if for some reason we cannot get town meeting to take place before the end of the fiscal year, which is June 30th, on Monday, on the agenda for Monday's meeting, we have placed a 1/12 budget under Chapter 53 of the Acts of 2020. And that would be a layup for us for that 1 month budget until we can get to town meeting to make the final appropriation. So a lot of pieces in motion, but I'm confident we're going to be able to get this done and move forward on a positive foot. This vote tonight essentially locks in and validates all the work that the staff, that the K-8 school committee, the regional school committee, the financial planning committee, has done to get us to this point. Now you validated that with your recommendations this evening. Last stop is the Board of Selectmen. And then it's just a matter of scheduling town meeting and getting these budgets approved. So thank you for your attention this evening.
And we had just one quick one. I had one more comment. It was in our packet. That was a good news in a way. Our snow and ice budget was listed. It came in at $118,706 under budget.
Yes. So that's great news for us because it means not only this year, not only did we not have to dip into the Appropriation Committee's reserve account, the 175,000, but we didn't expend the full snow and ice budget this year, which is always great because that money just closes out to free cash. That will help offset our reduction or our losses in revenues in the fourth quarter of fiscal 20. So that is very good news for us.
Okay, I think our work is done tonight. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote. Anthony,
Aye.
Janice,
Aye.
George,
Aye.
Bob,
Aye.
and myself, Rick, aye. That will close our meeting of the Appropriations Committee for this evening. Thank you all.
Thank you
Thank
very much.
everybody.
Aye.